Great. And we'll start from the top again. Welcome, everyone. My name is Hannah Locke, and I'm the Prenatal to 5 Innovation Supports Program Manager with this strategy, and happy to be here today with you both on Zoom and in Tukwila. Oh, man. Okay. Well, I'll try to figure out why some of the screen isn't working. Oh, okay. Not sure what that's about, but now it's working, so I won't I won't move. And we're going to be sharing a little bit more about the Prenatal to 5 Innovation Fund. Before I get started, just want to quickly introduce Alessandra Pollock on Zoom. I don't know if you want to wave, and then Nasra Osman in the room. They're going to be, if you noticed, part of this information session after I share sort of the basic overview information about the request for proposal. One thing that we really value as part of this work is community building and partnership building. And so they're going to share a little bit more expanding on the Innovation Fund, but in a way that is kind of like more relational. And for that piece, I will step out just to follow all of our specific procurement rules so that you can feel free to share with one another. Okay. Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and jump in because we've got a lot of content today. For today, I'm going to share a brief overview of Best Starts for Kids and this Prenatal to 5 strategy, and then really jump into, of course, the meat of the request for proposal. We'll offer a little bit more project-based examples so that you can have a sense of what the scope of work could look like in practice, and then go into some parts of the proposal review. So looking at their criteria and then submission details. Question and answers is held time at the end, but you can definitely feel free to raise your hand, and Alessandra, I'll ask you to highlight if I'm missing anything on Zoom or in the chat or in the room. Feel free to interrupt with any questions you might have. Great. So many of you are likely familiar with Best Starts for Kids, but we'd like to give a brief introduction with all of our sessions. As a reminder, our vision is that we want to see babies born healthy, kids thrive, and young people grow up to be happy, healthy, and successful adults. So happy, healthy, safe, and thriving is our mission, and really centering equity in all the work that we do. So this is a quote from the Children's Youth and Advisory Board that we always want to stress and highlight. Equity is an ardent journey toward well-being as defined by the affected. And I hope that you see that represented in the goals of this request for proposal. A little bit more about Community Youth Advisory Board. I also know that they're looking for folks to join that board as well. You might have seen in that communication. And a little bit more about the approach of this full initiative, which spans from prenatal to young adult, the really focusing on promotion, prevention, early intervention, as well as policy and systems change. And I think one piece of the Prenatal to 5 Innovation Fund, although there is a specific focus on serving communities and improving outcomes prenatal to 5, these approaches are accessible through the projects that we're focusing on. So really outside of the realm of just direct services and moving into other kind of outside of our other strategies. This is sort of a list of the breakdown of the levy funds and different investment areas. This funding investment area and strategy falls under investing early. Kind of break that down a little bit more for you. For Prenatal to 5, there are several strategies that Best Starts for Kids that focus on direct services. And innovation supports actually falls under these other type of strategies with different areas of focus. Innovation supports is at the core a capacity building strategy really focused at the program level. So if you're familiar with Best Starts for Kids, there's also a general kind of capacity building strategy that provides application or TA as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about that today. But innovation supports focus on supporting here we go. Focuses on supporting at the program level, really building on communities, creativity, and connection to build up programs in this early phase. So the different types of supports that we provide, I introduced Alessandra and Nasra. They're consultants, part of a larger team that provides supports to program level staff and managers as they really design and develop their programs in these early phases. And that also is reflected in this funding opportunity as well. Okay. So this is just a summary of the key elements. Now we're moving into really the specifics of the P5 Innovation Fund. So the goal of this fund is to advance community-led, innovative, and responsive anti-racist approaches that center communities and families in King County most impacted by disparities. So again, tying to that equity goal, as well as we're moving to advance these ideas and approaches to build the capacities. So one thing I want to note right at the start is that this funding, as you can see, is meant to be responsive. So we're offering the opportunity across a 2-year span, as we know that there are many emergent needs and changing environments in the context that we're living in, that we might see changes in the needs of families as well as providers in the community. And so in our initial work group feedback from folks, we heard that they wanted this to be available across time and without not just one submission deadline with one opportunity. So that's why you'll see that this is an open and continuous request for proposal, meaning that there are 3 submission rounds that folks can apply within. It's also, again, our focus is capacity building in this sort of phase of moving forward innovative ideas. And so it's really project-based. Again, it's not intended to sustain direct services or implementation of programs long-term. It's intended to have some really kind of concrete goals within a project that can move forward towards hopefully more more sustainable work in the future. Based off of the amount of funding available and the funding request limits per project, we anticipate up to about 25 awards to be made across this period of time. And I'll go more into the details of each submission round if you're interested in sort of the timeline later. Just to expand a little bit around the overall goal of Innovation Fund, again, centering on who. Oh, excuse me. I can't see part of my slides because of the issue with this. So the what, sorry. We seek to increase our collective capacity to build up innovative community-driven approaches, again, that center BIPOC families, immigrant refugee families, LGBTQ families, families with disabilities, families involved in the child welfare system, and low-income families, as well as those geographically isolated. So if you've seen in many of Bustart's focus populations, these are the areas that we're focused on where you see the greatest disparities in multiple health and education outcomes. And so with that, we see community leaders most close to these communities to design, develop, pilot, and build the potential of innovative anti-racist approaches. I realize that sounds a little bit jargony, so we're going to give examples of what that is. It's trying to be broad in saying an approach. So an approach could be a program idea, a policy change, a product. We had a group create a book where they saw a gap where there weren't books that really reflected their community. It could be media campaigns, creating change in place and space, or connection across services. So really a broad, again, while several of our direct services strategies have really clear focus on certain areas and outcomes prenatal to 5, this offers an opportunity for ideas that maybe cross or are outside of those existing strategies. And really the goal is that all babies and children in King County grow to be happy, healthy, safe, and thriving. And we know we can't get there unless we focus on these communities with the greatest disparities. Okay, so who? Folks that we hope are seeing this opportunity and interested in learning more will moving forward with these innovative approaches are leaders deeply connected to communities most directly impacted by these inequities. And we're interested in partnering with these communities because we know that they're well positioned to further the development of these ideas, these approaches, taking into account both today's unique challenges and opportunities, while also drawing wisdom from a deep connection with the shared history, values, cultural practices, knowledge, and lived experiences of their community for which they're designing or developing ideas. Okay. I'm going a little bit fast. There's a lot of information, so again, feel free to check in if you have any questions. Keep narrowing a little bit to more specific details. So you'll see in the request for proposal, the scope of work here is giving a little bit more content to the projects that we're interested in folks proposing. So projects under this request for proposal should directly contribute to advancing community-led, innovative, and responsive anti-racist approaches. And again, including but not limited to these types of ideas. Projects should prioritize and center communities and families in King County, again, focusing on those most impacted by disparities. And projects should include a clear plan and timeline to implement the activities within a 6-month period. So acknowledging it's, again, the focus is on building capacity, sort of this more short-term, time-limited projects. And so there's some flexibility on the timeline, but most likely 6 to 12 months would make the most sense. Okay. Again, in the RFP, you can see some examples expanding on types of projects. And these are ones that really align with how we the framework that we use with innovation supports around developing ideas and building capacity of programs, as well as other projects in this sort of early phase of exploration, of coming together to build up further foundational pieces. So I won't read through all of these. I encourage you to look into the RFP. There's definitions that you'll see here on the slide for each of these. I'll just highlight them. So the types of projects are anything involving partnership building, community engagement and listening, co-design processes, testing small scale implementation. Sometimes you might call that a pilot. Later today, you might talk about prototyping, which is sort of like a pilot, but maybe even shorter term. So really just testing out the delivery of services or implementation of ideas. And then also, we know that there's innovative things happening in the community that are working already. And so, of course, want to acknowledge that. And sometimes amazing things are happening within communities, but not everybody knows about it. So also want to offer opportunity that a project could be based on a community group sharing out what they're doing within their community that's working well, with the hopes that that could be something another community within King County could learn from. And then also acknowledging that this critical work is already happening in community, and oftentimes at the community level, there still could be value of support of building capacity for that work through infrastructure and capacity development. This is like, and I'll offer some examples, but a group of a small group, maybe they're not a fully formed organization yet, have all these amazing ideas on doing innovative work in their community, but they would like to move to the next step to be able to expand or deepen their work. So some of that might look like building up their infrastructure, exploring potential to access more funding for the work that they're doing. So maybe gaining a fiscal sponsor or things like that to kind of move based off of their needs and wants to build the capacity of their community group. Again, just want to highlight what is not supported through this, given the focus on really building capacity and offering this space for exploration in innovation. So this is not funding for ongoing or existing direct services, as well as it's not for ongoing operating expenses. And because of the, some of the ideas and approaches, we actually hope could include like analysis and thinking about how our structures and systems are impacting families. We just wanted to make a note that while we can have elements that are focused around policy, for government dollars, the county cannot invest in partisan and political activities. And if you have questions about that specifically, I'd be happy to dig in and try to answer those too. Okay. Great. So we wanted to be able to offer an example to kind of expand on some of these project ideas. So we gave the definition, and then in the RFP itself, there is an example of activities as well. Please don't take this as like, oh, I need to build a project that looks just like this. That's not the case. We just wanted to give some concrete examples. So in one concrete example, we want to share just really quick a walkthrough. So the challenge or the issue, for example, let's just imagine that this is our focus here. King County families have been impacted by severe heat waves in the several past years. And in our work, we're imagining this, we're a partnership in this room. We're going to focus on families with young children in areas with the greatest environmental health disparities who are most impacted by this heat. Okay, so what does partnership building look like if we're going to focus on this area? So there's a definition again of how we see partnership building, centering relationships and collaboration. An example of a project activity could be hosting a series of community building events to talk about this issue and to hear experiences of families, connecting with folks from different sectors, different places that impact or touch this challenge or context. And one thing I want to note about projects is that in a proposal, it doesn't need to be limited to one type of project. So we do want to recognize that the budget is $30,000 for the project. So, want to know that constraints of that, but if there's some elements of multiple of these types of activities that you feel is you're most interested in, that's okay. It doesn't have to be solely one type. Okay, and community engagement and listening was another area here. Activities focusing on deepening connection and understanding of community experiences, especially our focus community in this case, which was families with young children in those areas most deeply impacted by heat waves. So that could look like a participatory research project where families document their thoughts or feelings during a heat wave, and then having some time to look through and understand that experience to come up with the goal of later, like how do we then, now we understand more deeply this issue and experience of families, how can we respond better in different ways? And then co-design. Co-design is really just coming together and using a really intentional process to plan and generate ideas to address any issue. So here, this group is doing more of a visual. It could be a brainstorming session. There's a lot of creative ways, like there's a whole field around design, right? And lots of different that are also our consultants would be happy to chat with you around different ideas. And many of you have led processes in your communities for bringing folks together to come up with ideas. So an activity could be leading a process where you're coming together with folks to come up with ideas of things you could pilot or like test out in your community to address this situation. And then another type of project is a small scale implementation, sometimes called a pilot. One thing to note, I guess, for the proposal, just logistical piece, for anyone proposing to pilot an idea, we note that could have greater costs. So the budget for anything that would be piloting the implementation of something can be up to $50,000. So it's a little bit different for any pilot. So an example of testing out an idea or response, an approach to heat waves could be implementing a communications campaign to raise awareness of the impact of extreme heat on young children, and then collecting feedback. So with any pilot, we want to see that there's like, what are you hoping to learn from this? Again, we're building our capacity. We're not sustaining this work long term, but we hope that you can learn something to then go to the next group and say, here's what we learned and we know. And also maybe sometimes it didn't work. And so reshaping it and starting over. We talked about sharing stories for things that are working well. That could look like bringing together BIPOC family serving organization to discuss what they're doing within their programs or communities to build awareness of the heat impact on young children. And then for infrastructure and capacity development, again, these are focused on one-time support that builds organizational potential to sustain or advance community-led innovation. And here's an example here. I think I already mentioned for an organization or a smaller group hoping to grow their capacity. Okay. Any questions? Okay, so I'm going to move from sort of that scope of work and then into the proposal logistics. Yeah. Yeah.
Is it recommended to pick one and focus on that, or if it's a pipeline, like you pick two different things? How does that?
Yeah, so I would I do want to note that.
Hannah, could you repeat the question too?
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, the question was with regard to these sort of 6 categories of types of projects. Correct me if I'm wrong, like, would you recommend like choosing 2 of these or 1 or more in any proposal? I would really recommend, that whoever you're joining together to think of a proposal, like really just reflect on the type of ideas and then center what you think would work best for you, as well as, again, want to recognize the limitations of, these are small grants. So I know that the need is great and the urgency is strong, but wanting to also allow folks to really I think one goal of this is to slow down and have time and resources to really think through to do this work in a way that is feasible. So realistic and, also honoring if you're engaging families in certain ways. So definitely, what is your capacity to take on this work within that budget as well? And a timeline that could be 6 months to 12 months. So yeah, we'll leave that up to you to decide. Yeah, sure. One more question.
Expenses.
Yeah.
When you see operating staffing, is that not considered between stipends or participating families, giving them incentives, and what is?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the question was with regards to not supporting ongoing operating expenses. Does that mean that this can't cover stipends or gift cards to families or things like that? This just means that this is a project-based grant and it's meant to build sustainability, and we wouldn't want a group to say, okay, for this year, this grant's going to cover this person's salary or FTE, right? Because this is short term and time limited. This is intended to be, so we want the budget to be full for what it takes to this project. I think as long as you're taking part of that and focused on this, they're adding this on, then that's okay. But just want you to recognize that this is not going to be renewable. It's not for something long term. So just want really to be mindful of that as you're budgeting.
And the sort of follow-up or maybe similar question. So if you have an FTE already dedicated to something that's related to this, obviously one of these grants would not fulfill that full FTE, but if you wanted them to take on a new project, would that be acceptable?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. So I think it's just ongoing in the sense of okay, now this is going to be this person's job or how, yeah. I'm sorry, I didn't repeat that question. Did folks on Zoom hear the question about using staff time as part of the budget?
No.
Okay. The question was related to like operating expenses, could the budget include staff's FTE if they were going to take this on as a project? And the answer was yes. Again, just being mindful that this is, you know, temporary in your budgeting.
Thank
And
you.
then I see a question from Mayette.
Yes, let's see, I think it's a couple in one. Looking at doing a collaboration, there would be a lead organization, but looking at doing a collaboration between two organizations that would be addressing the challenges experienced prenatally for Black women, as well as as it pertains to early childhood development. I guess my question is, again, looking at it being a time limited project, collaborations, that falls into that category and can expand both the prenatal through the 5, hitting those populations.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So I just let me share back what I understood of the question. You're interested in a collaboration across 2 organizations, and the work would be focused on prenatal to 5. And kind of, is that more or less, is that eligible, or is that a project that could apply? So
Yes, yes.
Yes.
And so there
Okay.
would be a couple of activities within those spans.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. That's a good segue into sort of eligibility and criteria. As you can see, like the types of activities are really community-based. They can involve multiple organizations, multiple folks in the community. So we absolutely encourage partnerships or collaborations to apply. The way that the application questions are written is as if it was one. So we do encourage you to absolutely share if this would be work that would be completed collaboratively across different organizations or groups. You would want to indicate sort of the lead organization in that, and that would be who would, I guess, be technically applying. But please do share if this is a collaboration and about sort of your relationship, and just you want to make sure that's apparent in your responses as well. Ultimately, I'll get into kind of contracting pieces later, though there would be sort of one entity that would hold the contract with King County. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and great questions. Quickly move us back to criteria. Okay, great. So yes, this RFP is open to individuals, community groups, nonprofit organization, community-based orgs, tribal orgs, for-profit entities. It's really open, and we really encourage partnerships, as I mentioned. So I love that example. And then small community groups, as well as, of course, as we're thinking about who the community leaders are in designing this work, community-based BIPOC-led organizations as well are encouraged to apply. And the desired qualifications listed for the request for proposals also indicate sort of the types of organizations or types of activities and proposals that would be best fit for this funding opportunity. So kind of highlight these here. We're looking for proposals that indicate a deep understanding of the lived experiences, language, culture, and our ethnicity of the parents, caregivers, and families that the project is centering. Projects and organizational leaders that uphold and center community and family needs and interests in decision-making and recommendations. That the proposals indicates understanding of how historical and present day systemic racism and oppression harms families prenatal to 5 in King County. And of course, beyond that too, but we're centering prenatal to 5. And then demonstrating the potential to increase our collective capacity. So whether that be what will this project result in terms of our learning, our knowledge, the relationships built or resources increased, understanding, creativity, new ideas. So again, focusing back on like what is community-led innovation? And how can this move us forward to solutions that reach, so all babies born in King County are happy, healthy, safe, and thriving. And then finally, we're looking for proposals that demonstrate readiness to implement the proposed activities. So that within the application, the activities are clear, feasible, and reasonable within the timeline, as well as the budget is complete and aligns with those activities. And then demonstrating the ability to lead the work, again, while centering families. So also having the current experience, knowledge, and partnerships or relationships to be able to do the activities that you're proposing. Okay. So that's all listed out. These slides will be shared as well as the recording from today, but this is all in the request for proposal document itself as well. I did want to also highlight that as we're really centering community-led innovation, smaller organizations as well as a cohort of different types of activities and different community-led responses. So maybe addressing different issues or different areas across King County will be prioritized. So if, for example, in the initial submission and review, there's like 10 high quality, highly rated proposals. The final decision making of which ones to award might prioritize these areas. Okay, a little bit more around submission details. So again, this is an open and continuous RFP process, meaning that you can submit at any time. So the application is already open and there's 3 submission deadlines. So if you miss the first one, you can submit one the day after and it'll be reviewed at the next submission deadline. It also means that if you submit for the first round and are not recommended to be awarded, that you can get feedback or you can, go back to the community, you can make changes and you can apply again. Yeah. Okay, and then just wanted to note that this application is using Microsoft Forms. So it's sort of the hub, the link to Forms, and I can put it in, or Alessandra, I don't know if you're able to put it in the chat and Zoom. The Forms link has the link to the RFP, like PDF document, as well as updated frequently asked questions. So I know many of you, which is great, have already sent in questions. Questions that came up today will be recorded and shared on that platform on Forms. So you do have to kind of click through to get to the application because it's growing and growing. And then just wanted to note that the application for the proposals includes 3 different sections. So the first set, when you go to the Forms link, will ask just basic organizational information, contact information, and then the narrative questions is where we're really learning about your proposal. That's section 2, and then the budget narrative is sort of your planned budget and budget total for the activities that you're proposing. I want to highlight that for section 2, the narrative questions, we are doing our own testing here of offering 3 different options of how to respond to these questions. So again, in our initial work group, we really wanted to think about accessibility and trying new things the way that we're running our RFPs at the county. And one way we're trying this out with this work is to offer that you can use the sort of more traditional way and submit in writing on Forms. Since it is Forms, I will note that I don't think you can like save, right? It's like a survey submission almost. So you might want to write it on a separate document and copy paste later. But there's also an option on the form to sign up to submit through video recording. So that would be, you can use like Zoom or Teams, I think, and record yourself and then add it to a different platform that holds like a video link and upload that link if you're more of a talker and prefer to share your ideas in that way. And then there's also the option in a more relational way to sit and respond through a virtual interview on Zoom. So there are some specific information about submission in those ways, like a time limit and kind of structure for that. I do recommend if you're going to do the virtual interview, please do let us know as soon as possible so that we can just work through the scheduling pieces. Yeah, question.
Say multiple submissions are acceptable, is that like one per round, or is that like, hey, I've got thousands of great ideas, I'm gonna send you a bunch of project applications?
I don't think we have a hard rule on that. I encourage probably not sending too many ideas in.
Don't have that.
Okay. It was more intended for folks that submitted and were declined and then wanted to submit again. But I suppose there's nothing that's explicitly states that you couldn't submit more than one. I will say that we're not intending to award more than one per like group. So yeah. With the exception, and we had to make an update of that per group rule for any org that is a fiscal sponsor, we would consider, like if you're acting as a fiscal sponsor, a different scenario. So you could be on receive an award as another group's fiscal sponsor, as well as an award to do work yourself. So that's the one exception. Sorry, did the folks online hear the question there?
I think if you could repeat it, that would be
Okay,
great.
sorry. I was just responding. There was a question because it says multiple submissions are acceptable. Can my group like apply 5 times for different ideas that we have? And my sort of vague answer was that we don't have anything that says you cannot do that, but it will be a competitive process. And so I encourage you to kind of think and focus on what would be your priority rather than doing too many submissions. As well as highlighting that we'll only award one project per organization. Laura, did you have a question?
I do, thanks. On the Microsoft forms, you can only advance if you fill out the questions as you go. So is there a PDF of all the questions for the narrative that we could get separately?
Yeah, that's a great question. The narrative questions are in the PDF RFP document, as well as next to the rating criteria for each. So that is available to you if you want to just look on paper at the questions.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, sure. Another question online.
Hi, yeah, thank you so much for this info session. This is super helpful. I just had a follow-up on the fiscal sponsorship piece. Would it still be the 30,000 total, and then it would just be divvied up between the fiscal sponsor and then whatever their sponsee?
Yeah, the up to amount would be the same for any group applying, like with a fiscal sponsor or a partnership. The budget total would be the same. So that would be, totally, it would be between you to decide like what your budget looks like in terms of any kind of partnership or fiscal sponsorship.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Great questions. Okay, that kind of leads us well into just another, just for transparency purposes, wanted to highlight some contracting pieces for those of you who maybe have not yet contracted with King County or DCHS, which is the Department of Community and Human Services. So we did, our folks in contracts have started to really look more at the insurance requirements. So wanted to highlight that really early just for awareness. So in the RFP document at the end, there's an attachment B that sort of outlines our generally required, although it's always seen on a case-by-case basis, but sort of the generally foundational insurance requirements. And so knowing that individuals or small community organizations might be interested in applying, please do look at those requirements. And then I also wanted to highlight that if knowing that this is a small grant and just up to 30,000, for example, that we are definitely mindful of then the burden of some of these contracting requirements. And so there is some at the county's discretion and conversation after awards to be made, we can talk about if there's any need or undue burden from the insurance requirements there. But if you have any questions up front before, to be honest, I probably can't answer much around insurance, but I can get those answers for you if you have questions before you even apply. Also wanted to highlight as part of this work, if you are awarded and contract to be part of this work for Innovation Fund, we are seeing the folks joining it as a cohort, and we'll have some activities that folks will participate in if awarded, as well as some capacity building supports that will be made available. So will be some consultants that can support along the way, and any folks who are awarded would also be eligible for Best Start's capacity building. There'll also be some fairly minimal, but there will be some data collection and evaluation that will happen in the context of these projects as well. Great. And then as you are considering submitting a proposal, wanted to note a few things here as well. So there is proposal assistance that is available and encouraged. I think the next slide will go a little bit more in depth, and we have two, I think, TA providers in the room, so they can maybe share a little bit more around that. And then as mentioned before, this information session will be available, recording will be available. Each submission deadline, I'll also host another session. So I don't know if you'd want to come again, but you're welcome to come again if you'd like. I'll host them before each of the submission deadlines. And then I'm actually not the RFP lead on this. So if you do have any questions outside of this time today, please direct them to Nikki Nguyen, whose email is here. And we can follow up with her info too. It's also on the documents on for Microsoft Forms. I skipped over language access. Sorry about that. Also, language access is available to you. So just wanted to note there if you, for example, would like some of the materials translated for better language access, please request that as soon as possible. We're happy to do the translation and share that out to everybody. Another consideration as well, if folks desire, they can submit their responses in their preferred language, and we'll do the translation back for review purposes. I also wanted to pause and just make a note around other tools that are available. More and more, we are seeing the use of AI in submissions for job applications and procurements. And just want to note that while we know that these, do have benefit and can help folks think through how they respond to questions, that, in alignment with Best Start's values, we really are focused on the authenticity of your voice and hearing directly from you, as well as really looking for specific and detailed examples of your work and your relationships, which is something in my understanding that these tools cannot provide. So we aren't saying don't use them, but we are saying please use if using wisely, and consider how you're ensuring that the responses are really from your voice and centering your work and your community. Great. So the next slide is just a quick note on the application assistance. Did you want to comment, Betsy, or we're just so I'm going to take a moment to introduce, or if any of the other TA providers want to introduce themselves. There's a camera right here. Yeah, just for the online, if you want to come up, and then if you can just share a little bit more around what application assistance looks like, that'd be great.
This is
Thank
fun.
you.
Yeah, I know. Hi, folks. I'm Betsy Archambault with RHL Consulting.
I'm Catherine Valenti I'm under the Crux Consortium umbrella. And for those of you in the room, deepest apologies. I thought this was online. So at 10 o'clock, you weren't there. So sorry about that.
So a little bit about how a lot of us do TA. We're so excited to be able to support each and every one of you. And that can look really like a million different ways. That can go from, hey, Catherine, I have this idea. Is it a fit? Do you think that it will, how can I make this idea more competitive and more in alignment with the goals? You know, or it can be, I have this draft. I don't know how to put data in it. Should I put some quotes in it? Should I have some storytelling? You know, what's the best way to structure this so, you know, so I can really get the most amount of points? Does my budget actually make sense? And so we can really do any number of things from copy editing to just making some suggestions and comments. And we all really, really want this to be really true and genuine to you, like Hannah was saying. And so, I mean, for me, I try to have the draft or whatever that we're working on for the shortest amount of time because I want everybody else to have it for the most amount of time, right? And any suggestions that we ever make, please feel free to reject because it's just our perspective and our idea. And in the end, we still really, really, really want your ideas and your authenticity to come out, right? Because we are like, kind of like little visiting house guests, you know, along in this process, don't you think?
I love that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. What did I miss?
Maybe some practical things to think about as you're launching into this, whether you use TA or not.
Yeah.
This is going to hold true. If you use TA, best idea is to reach out early. That gives us the longest amount of time. In my experience, and maybe you agree, it takes about 3 versions to really tell your story well.
Yeah.
You know, the first one, unless you're, and I say that like if grant writing is your job, I'm going to say the same thing. And for most small CBOs, it's not your job, right? So just anticipate, give yourself the timeline for 3 versions. And I know that feels like a lot, but it's so worth it, right? Because what the polished product at the end of the day needs to tell your story, and it needs to tell it to raters who know nothing about you. And a few things that I think we all see a lot of. We see people putting a lot of language into a question, but not answering the question.
Yeah.
So read the question and the rating criteria very closely. We see a lot of saying the same thing over and over and over again. And that does 2 things. It bores the reader. And when you bore a reader, you're less likely to get all the points you need.
Yeah.
And it wastes precious space, right? Those character spaces are just like, they're gold for you to tell something different in each section. So when you find yourself writing the same thing again, circling the drain, stop, pause, think about what else you can say. The other thing, I mean, I love that you all are offering the video and the interview.
Yeah.
And that, well, I think it probably does require less real time at the paper, putting fingers to keyboard. There's still a lot of prep I mean, because and you're passionate about your work. And like anything anyone's passionate about, you can talk forever about it, right? Right? But you need to be really tight in telling your story, whether it's on paper and video in person. So practice, 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 give yourself the time. And can't concur more on the AI comment, right? We have seen so many proposals that say the exact same thing, exact bullet points, exact language. And by the 3rd one, you're like, ho-hum, right?
Yeah.
So, and your work is not ho-hum, to make it pop.
Yeah. And likewise, I have started to see some budgets that are made in AI. And then folks coming and saying, all right, I have this beautiful budget. And I say, okay, well, for the budget narrative, what does this mean? And then the answer back to me is, well, what do you think it means? And it took me a little while the first time. I was like, I don't know. Well, what do you think it means? And they were like, well, this is just what AI told me to write down. And I was like, oh my gosh. And it actually takes so much longer to backtrack and say, we got to start again. Because what's actually real? What do you really need the money for? Let's go back through your narrative and highlight every single piece that should be in your budget. And that's what should be there. And then, we'll figure out the other things that aren't readily apparent. But if you just get a template from AI, it's going to be really hard and there will be questions on your budget.
You got a really strong team. There are a bunch of us that all do this work. So find a good match to work with you and, that respects your style. Again, we're here to tell your story. So, make use of us. Good luck to all of you.
Yes. Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, you too.
All right, thank you. And if there's anybody, a TA on Zoom, feel free to introduce yourself too. I don't know if there was, but okay, great. So I'm almost done. Sorry, this is a lot of information. This is just an overall overview of the timeline to highlight before we wrap up with this section. So this is for round 1. Oh, sorry, I forgot that I had them floating in. So today's info session, we had an open house that a recording is also available if for some reason you wanted to hear this again. And then the first submission deadline is May 9th. Review process will take place in June. So sort of for those awarded, pre-contract meetings will take place in July, and then sometime July or August, the activities can start. And as I mentioned, we'll also have some cohort activities. I think just one, there'll be one in-person event for folks to join sometime in August or September. And then, oh, sorry, I didn't realize these were floating in. These are the dates for the second round. If, it feels like this timing's too tight or not the right moment, you again are welcome to apply at any of the rounds. So the final round and the total amount will be based off of the remaining funds available, though there will be some funds available based off of the total, is January 23rd for work to be completed in 2026. Which sounds like a long ways away, but isn't. Okay, great. So that wraps up sort of the basic information sharing around the Prenatal to 5 Innovation Fund. Really great questions already, but I'll just kind of open it up to see if there's any other lingering questions that you might have. Yeah, Betsy.
My question is, will there be an FAQ that comes out with questions that go to Nikki as the RFP lead?
Yes, so Betsy asked a question around FAQ or frequently asked questions that are documented that go to Nikki, who's the RFP lead. So yes, absolutely. Both today's questions will be typed up and shared out, as well as there's already actually been a few questions submitted through Nikki, and then she's available for questions like throughout the RFP timeline. And those are being posted on the Microsoft Forms. So that's a pretty easy editable platform for us. So when you open up the form, you can see sort of the overview and the attachments related to the RFP. And then below is this running FAQ. So please do, as you go through, actually, if you're going to apply, you have to click through. So you'll see the FAQ there, and feel free to keep referencing back. That's where any question that comes through, we actually, before we respond directly to that person, we respond to everybody so that the information is made available to everybody at the same time. Great question. And I think for those online, that link is in the chat. Great. And then just the final piece is that somebody mentioned as it was coming in, we're in RFP season. There's a lot of opportunities coming out. So feel free to scan the QR code that will link to our funding calendar. So anything that's upcoming, I guess also there's a way to subscribe for any updates around funding opportunities. And then again, the info session as well as the slides will be made available after today. Okay. Any final questions? Again, I'll just one last ask, and then I'll kind of transition us to the next part. Okay, awesome. I'm going to stop sharing. Thank you all so much. I'm gonna stop the recording.